traffic is concerned. All right, so I have got Churchill Saoke, who is an analyst, joining me in studio. I'll be joined by analysts here later on. Good morning, Churchill.
Good morning, Winter.
A child only educated at home is not educated. That is a Ghanaian proverb. What do you make of that?
You know, education exposes you to knowledge.
Yes.
And the knowledge that you'll get from home is limited. Mm-hmm. You might get wisdom, but the knowledge that drives humanity and drives development, you'll get in a more formalized setting, like in an education setup.
Yes.
Yeah.
So education at home is not enough?
It's not enough.
All right. Okay.
You'll not be able to get equipment that will make you to understand matter. You know, you will be able to understand the universe more in a simulated setup that you'll only find in school.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very well. That is your interpretation about it. Okay. Let me take you through the front page of the Star newspaper. 3 fresh hurdles against Ruto's tax plan. 3 fresh hurdles against Ruto's tax plan. LSK and unions to file new court cases against Bill as Azimio stages rally in Nairobi. That is on the front page of the Star newspaper. 3 fresh hurdles against Ruto's tax plan. The story is completely detailed there for you on page 4 and 5. You can take a look at that. On the front page again, it was all sporty weekend of rally and football champions. We had Sebastian Ogier, a French national, taking the lead yesterday and winning the WRC in Naivasha, and Kogalo winning the 20th league, FKF Premier League, beating Tusker by just 1 point. That was happening yesterday at the Kasarani Stadium. It was a sporty weekend, so to speak. Shabab beheads 5 during attack on Lamu villages. The story has it that at least 5 men were beheaded and many houses torched in an Al-Shabaab attack in Salama and Juhud villages in Nkumbone, that is in Lamu County. And of course, according to reports and eyewitnesses, the attackers were dressed in military regalia before they struck terror on the residents. D-Day for Oduola as senators decide on his impeachment. The ad hoc committee of the Senate actually had their committee their sitting last week, and they are going to present their report today before the floor of the House. There's going to be a special sitting, so it's going to be a do or die for the Siaya deputy governor, either to hold on to his lucrative job or lose it once and for all. But I'll be discussing that later on, the war between governors and the deputies and how this can be resolved. Okay, doctors want law to allow dying to donate organs. So, according to medical experts at the MTRH, that is Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in Eldoret, they want Parliament to make a law that will provide a legal framework on how Kenyans can donate body organs before death. The medics argue that many people die with the healthy organs that can help those still living through replacement. But Churchill, this could, subject us into a lot of legal hurdles for us to get such kind of amendments and such kind of law to be effected. Absolutely.
The biggest challenge, I think, would be the question of it being misused, because you see, the causes of death. People might want to kill others to get some of those organs. So, like you remember during the times, I think in the early years, in the 90s, when blood transfusion had not been formalized and established, well institutionalized by government,
yes,
there were people who were actually trading on blood, and they could get people, hijack people in the bushes and drain blood from them so that they go sell. So that will be the likely implication of that kind of thing. But when you look at it, of course, positively, there are those who might be dying, but then the organs are still usable. There are some parts of the human body that they do not die immediately. A person dies, and that is scientifically and empirically has been proved. So positively it can be used, but then again, if there are no proper legal regimes and people also do not see humanity in its need,
yes,
it may be misused.
Okay. All right. So that's first concern, but as you correctly put, it's going to bring a lot of legal backgrounds on as far as this is concerned. But we'll discuss this, the 3 fresh hurdles against Ruto's tax plan. We'll get into that later on as far as the tax is concerned. On the front page of the Daily Nation, return of terror. Return of terror. Resurgence of Somali terrorist group worrying as frequency of attacks increases. That is on the front page of the Daily Nation. We have got some statistics here. In Mandera County, between June 3rd and 20th, a spate of Al-Shabaab attacks rocked Mandera County. Wajir County also had that on June 13th, in Garissa County on June 12th, and in Lamu, June 18th. So it's a return of terror, and now this calls for the government to be on the lookout and have more intelligence on the ground to arrest this situation. It's a wrap. Wajir Savers brilliant WRC Safari Rally win as Toyota claim bragging rights. That happened yesterday in Naivasha. Now, Nakumincha vows to take on cartels as she seeks to clean up NHIF and KEMSA. That is the Health CS, Susan Nakumincha, saying that she will take on cartels as she seeks to clean up NHIF and KEMSA. Kenyan teenagers poor at problem solving, according to a study. A third of young people in Kenya struggle to identify simple problems as possible solutions, according to a report launched last week by Regional Education Learning Initiative, raising questions on how they are being equipped with the essential life skills. Now, this takes me back to my quote from Ghana, that a child only educated at home is not educated. Kenyan teenagers poor at problem solving, according to a study.
I think it's an issue. It's important for us to separate skills and knowledge. Skills is a product of knowledge. Yes. You get to know, knowledge helps you to know how things work, what really makes things the way they are. But then out of it, you draw the skills that you can be able to, you can make meaning of the knowledge. Mm-hmm. So there are certain skills that you can be able to attain at home. Like, for example, depending on the kind of parenthood you have, there are skills of communication that you can attain from home. Mm-hmm. There are motor skills that you can attain from home. But then the knowledge behind those skills, like, for example, how a motor vehicle works. I can be able to make a motor vehicle, but really you do not know the mechanism behind that motor vehicle. Yeah. So there is the theory behind some of this knowledge that you cannot attain at home, but the skills that you can attain at home. The life skills, the soft skills, you can get them at home. The motor skills, those hard skills, some of them you can get them from home based on the nurturing that you have. But the knowledge that then gives you reinforcement of those skills, it is likely that you cannot get them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Still on the front page of the Daily Nation here. Odor's moment of truth in House vote showdown, intense behind the scenes. Lobbying has characterized the impeachment hearing of besieged Siaya Deputy Governor William Oduor, whose fate now rests with the 47 elected senators. Is he going to survive the impeachment, or is going to retain his lucrative job? That is as far as this is concerned. Actually, that story of Kenyan teenagers who are not in a position to solve problems is a study and fleshed out there for you on page 2. You can take a look at that. Education and matters a lot. Mount Kenya elders tell Ruto to tame his officials' tongues. That's on the page 4. Mount Kenya elders tell Ruto to tame his officials' tongues. Former administrator says that government officials must always speak with decorum. That is according to Kikuyu Council of Elders Chairman Wachira Kiago, who said that some leaders must come and have some decorum with them. That is that. Okay, so the story of return of terror, at least 20 people killed in less than 1 month. The question is, where is the intelligence and how is the government going to affect this and actually arrest the situation? Are the terrorists outsmarting the government. Most of those killed in attacks within the month have been security personnel, including soldiers. Just last week, a number of soldiers were killed when they were responding to an attack in Lamu when their vehicle ran over an IED. A couple of them died, and so that's it. So does it mean that police is left at the mercy of militants? According to residents, that is as far as that's concerned. Okay, very quickly on to the front page of the Standard. Schools defy ministry. Schools defy ministry. The numerous orders from Ministry of Education leadership are being ignored by heads of schools for what they term as impractical policy directions and lack of adequate funding from the government. Experts say that the ministry appears powerless as only Teachers Service Commission holds sway. That is on the front page of the Standard. Schools defy ministry. It's been a big problem for a very long time, Churchill, between the schools and the ministry. That happened even during Magoha's time and even some other, administrations. But what is really ailing schools and ministries? Is it lack of capitation? Is it lack of money generally? Or schools are not getting the requisite resources to run the institutions?
You got it right. It's almost like a three-pronged issue. The first is you find that, there are capitation that the government should be taking to the schools, which sometimes is delaying.
Yes.
And ordinarily you will expect that the schools are also expected to offset certain running costs and operational costs. How do they get this money? They will then go into other ways of generating some of this income, and some of which have impact in the parents having to pay. And the Education Ministry will never want parents to pay an additional fee because it has a political implication. So then you realize that there are certain policy objectives that the ministry expects the schools to adhere to, but then because of the practicalities of the availability of resources, one, and two, the enforcement criteria. It's one thing to speak and to give a directive on a policy direction, is another thing to ensure that it's enforced. So the schools know very well that the enforceability of some of these directives and policies are not effective. So they take advantage of those gaps. For example, let me give you an example. When the ministry says that the school uniform should not be sold by schools.
Yes.
Parents can get the school uniforms elsewhere. I mean, that's a good, emotionally it's a very good thing. But the implementation is, the gap is there.
Yes.
How will you ascertain that the parents will not be getting the school uniforms from schools? When you are taking your child to the school, it is between you, the parent, and the teachers. The teacher will tell you that this uniform you have brought is not for the school, and if you don't want to get the one that I'm telling you, take your child wherever you want. So you realize that the enforcement of these directives, there is a big gap. So even TSC, the reason why TSC sort of has got a little bit of enforcement powers is because they have powers over the salaries of the teachers. And by that so being, the disciplinary mechanism and the way in which the human resource, the way they handle the human resource, teachers are likely to follow directives because that is where their salaries come from.
Absolutely. And a majority of, because the government would actually act on the basis of the government, and because a majority of directions come from the government, but now the real implementation, because teachers will not have a direct kind of supervision deep down in Lagdera, somewhere in Lamu, whatever it is. So schools will always have that kind of problem, and when the capitation is not taken care of, then we'll always have this kind of problem. All right. Is Ruto African diplomat or playing to the gallery? That is on the front page of the Standard. Is Ruto African diplomat or playing to the gallery? Of late, we've seen President William Ruto attending several fora of different heads of state and stakeholders, and the way he's always appeared is what is being captured here on the Standard. African diplomat or playing to the gallery? What is the danger of having the two, playing as a diplomat or playing to the gallery?
As the President of the Republic of Kenya, he has the role of being the top diplomat. And he would like to portray, and being a top diplomat helps him to portray the image of the country positively,
yes.
and it too also helps him to entrench the legitimacy of his government, so that it's recognized by people around, in as much as there are certain political turmoil locally, but globally people recognize the legitimacy of his regime. So it helps him to portray his image. Remember also, he came into power not really having a big international clout. So this is a moment that he's using to build that global clout, that he can endear himself into the international community. And one of the ways that ordinarily most of the presidents have always done this is by coming out to represent some big idea. And at the African level, Pan-Africanism is a big issue that will always make the whole continent to look at you as their leader. So he's coming out as a Pan-Africanist, a person who is driving the Pan-African agenda that is, what really Gaddafi stood for.
Yes.
So that is an idea that would make the continent to really see you as have a positive image of you, and also repackage your country positively. So that is exactly what he's trying to do.
How will this resonate with the big boys, the West? Because at the end of the day, we'll speak, yes, but we'll have to go back and say, you know what, gentlemen, this is how it is. We have the big boys out there watching at us.
It all depends on how he plays it, because it's also politics. And as much as it's diplomatic, it's also politics. You can drive an agenda that is against the big boys verbally, but implementation-wise, you don't really mean
they
it.
Still have that pen to signatures. Exactly. Yeah.
So you publicly drive an agenda that is against them, but privately you are for them. So you tell them that don't worry about what I say.
Yeah.
Mind about what we do. All right.
Okay.
So in the long run, you're not going to fight the big boys, but then. So that will work for him positively. But when what you are saying, like for example, you're talking about the dollarization, and you act onto it, so the big boys are seeing what you are saying, and you are acting as to what you are saying, then you are going to be their enemies.
Okay. I'm quite interested in this one, because 9 months into office, what would you bring as a skeleton of his foreign policy? President Uhuru Kenyatta had his foreign policy, he's had his ambassadors and, his consulates across the world, President Mwai Kibaki, etc., etc. What would you buy as President Ruto's foreign policy?
For a long time, Kenya's foreign policy, and which has really influenced the foreign policy of the previous regimes, has always been built on peace and security.
Exactly. Kenya
being the epicenter of peace and security regionally, globally, and all that. But then, when you look at post Uhuru, when Ruto came in, you remember he was nominated to become the peace, the peace envoy in Sudan. And in Sudan, and the Sudanese, the warring factions really did not agree on him. So, but then when you look at what he has been trying to build, he's been trying to build his foreign policy around economics, right? Through just ensuring that he builds a global clout around his bottom-up economic model by having different companies, different countries endearing into his economic model. So that is so far what I really see him being really focused on. The questions around, maybe because of our history of peace, it is likely to emerge in the coming years, but is now what I see him building more, even when you look at his diplomatic visits and all the regional conferences and conferences that have been held, they're more around the economics. So that is what I see. We are likely to see more as time goes by, because you're now seeing the issues of climate change. That is, the Kenya is going to hold a very big climate change conference in September. We are likely to see how these things are going to emerge, so that we clearly define his economic model. At this stage, I only see economics.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. And it's also interesting to see how it's going to be at the end of 5 years before we go for another election, how his foreign policies stand and how Kenya stands to gain all other countries also will have to gain as far as this is concerned. But you've correctly put it, Kenya's foreign policy in all the subsequent regimes is because of peace and reconciliation and stability. When you look at what's happening in South Sudan, when they have issues, a majority of things and negotiations are done here in Nairobi or in Naivasha.
Exactly.
So that is very commendable. All right, on the front page of the People Daily, finally, Raila to renew fight with Ruto. Raila to renew fight with Ruto. Azimio leaders set to hit the streets, hold public barazas and trigger court action in a three-pronged onslaught on Kenya Kwanza. That is on page 4. State, according to State, we don't owe counties a cent. According to the State. All right, so there's a story here. The 250 million shillings city bus park to be flattened. Okay. According to Governor Sakaja, he says that plan to use facility as heavy vehicle holding ground has failed. This was done during the last regime with NMS, and now there are reports that it's going to be flattened. Okay. We take a break. We'll be right back. I see Wakili Gibson Gesore already in studio, just settling. We'll be getting into that shortly when we come back after this break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. So let's get into our discussion today. And gentlemen, Wakili Gibson, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I started with Churchill with a quote from Ghana. A child only educated at home is not educated. What do you make of that proverb?
I will tend to agree with the saying, because the world is becoming a global village. So if you are taught by your own village, the thinking is only that village, because education takes our community. So if that community is engaging in backward things, then you can only be as good as the backward things which that community practices. But if you have a mix, of different ideas, then you become shaped and sharpened by the world. You will be able to know which practices are practical and which ones are not, and which one are redundant, so that you can be able to be of help to society. That's why we go to school, and we advise that don't just school if you're born in Kisii, don't school in Kisii Primary, go to Kisii High School, then go to Kisii University.
And then you start doing business.
Start doing business in Kisii. So if you get to maybe go to your place and then come to Nairobi, then you get to have an amalgam of ideas which at the end of the day will help you, because you're going to live in a society which is bigger than your community.
Absolutely. All right. Churchill gave us his version of that. That reminds me of that a child who does not travel will only think that his mother is only the best cook.
Yes.
And ugali is only cook.
Exactly. Travel around, drink some mursik here and there, murenda here and there, then you'll appreciate the diversity we have across the world. Okay, so gentlemen, a lot happened over the week and over the weekend. And of course, I would suppose that we have so much that is going to happen this week. Let me start with what happened last week. We had a very long 2 weeks for the country. The budget happened. So I want us to go step by step and do the post-budget analysis. What really happened? What stood out for you? And on this note, let me start with you, Wakili, now that you are on the floor. What really stood out for you on that? Did Kenyans win? Did Kenya Kwanza win? Did Azimio win? Who won? And who lost?
It's yes and no for me. From where I see it, yes, Kenya won eventually, because we have a budget which has been passed, and now the issue is how it's good. When the money is raised, how is it going to be spent? Because at the end of the day, we have counties which have not been paid. We have a lot of things, NHIF issues, because that is really touching Kenyans. With this budget coming to pass, then we expect this money to be expended because there could not be any spending without the budget being passed. So that is the only part I can see Kenyans won.
Yeah.
As to the tug of war between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, I think there were some trade-offs which from where I sit there, I could be able to characterize them as good and bad, because there are some things we expected not to pass, but they eventually passed. But I think I could see that this budget is the most debated, the most negotiated, and the most transparent one. We hope the same process goes through the expenditures, because really passing the budget is the shorter arm of the stick. The bigger arm of the stick is really how does this money get expended, that we don't those people, those departments or ministries which have been entrusted with Kenyan funds, let's hope that they will be able to use them wisely, judiciously, to be able to help Kenyans at the end of the day, because that's really the bottom line for Kenyans. That is when they will win again. As to the collection of these monies, I think that's where the big challenge is. I think we have a wrong road of feeling the pain as Kenyans, but then nothing, even if when you have a boil, it disturbs you inside. But then for you to get rid of it and get well, you really have to go through some serious pain, more than the one you are feeling, to be able to start getting well. Let's hope that is what is going to happen.
All right.
And that is only if the leadership wants it to be.
Okay, Churchill.
Well, I think that the debate was intensive on the budget, and one thing that comes out and stood for me, of course, is it's very easy to divert attention of the public on the details of a budget by ensuring that the public focuses on one specific thing. So I think that the big part for the regime would be on implementation of this budget. Of course, there is a lot of things that is on the public that are not necessarily what happened on the floor, like you know, for example, the trade-offs that are being spoken about. You know, many people do not know about them, especially those who are outside. From outside, people see this as more like a Kenya Kwanza thing, and the other opposition parties were not part of it, and and that is not necessarily the case. So I think the key thing, and I think what maybe now the current regime really has to work on is implementing some of those things to ensure that they have the interest of the people at heart, because people are getting into, because of the discussions that were around this budget, people are getting into the next financial year with a lot of fears, possibilities of increase of the cost of living and things like that. The impact of the budget has been caused by the discourse around it. So the challenge to the government is how they are going to implement it to an extent that they do not play into what that public discourse caused. So that there is stability, there is people can invest, people do not fear using their money. Otherwise it might have a negative effect.
Because I'm asking the question based on the ingenious ways Kenyans use to survive. Because once somebody will tell you, okay, fine, let them pass the bill, but human beings will have this kind of ingenious way to survive and get to the next level. What do you think? Is the government going to meet the target? A budget of almost 4 trillion, and it's going to be with a target of an annual collection into the coffers. But how is it going to be? Are Kenyans going to feel that they are going to be part and parcel of the tax collection? Are they going to play up to what the government suggests, or are they going to just reinvent a way to survive? And the question is, what if the government doesn't meet its target? Because KRA is now, everything is now for KRA to lose. Wakili.
Yes, carriers are a very big task in terms of fulfilling their mandate, because really now the task has been given
because
to
Parliament
them.
has done its part.
Yes, it has done its part. And I think I would want to say it's KRA plus the Ministry of Finance, because KRA collects and then Ministry of Finance allocates accordingly, and it should ensure compliance with its other arms like the Commission of Revenue Allocation and the government auditor who actually audit. So we need to see a very transparent process. If these arms do not stand on their feet, my biggest fear is us having scandals after collecting all this money which Kenyans have suffered for.
Get the priority.
Yes, and then you find that this money has, we start having issues like the Kimwareri issues. You know, it's very painful. It will be very painful, and they are big disappointment to Kenyans. So it's an honest call to the president really to ensure that we have given him at least what he wanted. Let him do the best that he can with this money. And let him prove to us that actually he knows what he's doing. Because at the end of the day, if we end up having any scandal, I don't think Kenyans will forgive him for anything. And even the current crop of politicians, they stand to lose big, because Kenyans now have drawn their boundaries that we have the politicians, and then we have the executive who are a part of the executive, an extension of the executive in parliament, and then we are the Kenyans. We have allowed them to tax us, but let them use it wisely. I think that is a clarion call if it's not clear to them that they need to do that. The other thing is, as Kenyans, we are in a very interesting scenario with the debt. So we hope this money is going to be able to be expended wisely in terms of repayment of the debt, because there's also a huge, I think, 700 or 800 billion which is supposed to go to debt repayment. So we expect that to be the case. Jimmy Wanjigi came up with some interesting scenarios which I didn't want to believe. They sounded like some movie action, but then when I was asking one of the politicians, he told me that that case is not mad, that is actually the true position of where we are. So it's really a balance for the government and the executive to actually ensure that we don't get what Jimmy was trying to predict for Kenyans. We don't want doom. Nobody wants. That's why Kenyans, I think, have given the trade-offs to actually happen, to ensure that we have a win-win situation. At the end of the day.
Okay, Churchill.
And I think in addition to that is that, you know, when the monies are not well used, then it comes to the case that you're raising, where people will now find ways of circumventing even some of these tax measures. And in the long run, then then the government will not be able to raise some of those monies, you know. So I think the key question is, use the money well, let the money circulate, let the money be used for the intended purposes, and people see its value. Then when people see the value of the taxes they're giving, it will also bring positive political capital to the regime. Okay? To an extent that even in the next financial year, if you raise other additional taxes, people will not have problems because they're already seeing it. And I think it will serve the government positively. If they're looking at also, you know, we can't put re-elections onto these things. You know? So if you are looking at the impact of these on the next elections, it can be positive or negative depending on how best they implement. Because people have expectations. You know, you say, for example, you're going to build houses, people will want to see those houses. You know? You want to build maybe roads, people will want to see those roads. And there has to be also equity in the use of these resources. I think there is something that had happened in this country, which, as a progressive Kenyan, it will really be my hope that it still continues. In the evolution of our democracy, there has been the key thing of institutionalizing engagement of government and deassociating government operation from personalities. When, for example, we talk about allocation of resources, there are specific institutions that have been given the mandate by the Constitution to allocate these resources. And they need to be given that mandate to do their job and be deassociated from personalities. Because if we associate it with personalities, and, you know, for example, it ends up, and this is something that maybe even the president should think through. If you personalize certain work of institutions, then the failures of those institutions will fall on you. Are you getting?
Yes.
If you're saying that you have given money to counties, when you have not given the money to counties, you will be held accountable for that. Yet that is not your work constitutionally. There is an institution that is supposed to do that. So that deassociation is one thing that also will be very important as we go through implementation of this budget. And it will also help in building the image of key personalities within government.
That's what, because the association is very important, because now you'll have different ministries, overlapping their roles into different ministries, and that would actually bring conflict in the government. But let me look at it this way. Azimio claimed that they were going to push the budget to flow. But, in a mature democracy, which Kenya actually praises to be fitting in, we've seen some advanced democracies like the UK, the US, when you have an opposition, they will have to come with an alternative. But in this scenario, we didn't see Azimio or the other side of the minority in the National Assembly coming with a list of their alternative to that budget estimate and the proposal. We didn't see that on the floor of the House. My question to you, gentlemen, was Azimio whitewashed on the floor of the House? Okay.
I wouldn't say whitewashed really, but I would want to say that they didn't have a plan. They really lacked a plan, and then I think in the circumstance there's very little they could have done, because much as you are in opposition, also you are sitting at a position where you are seeing the country from a clear spectacle. So much as you are required to be opposition and play the role of opposition, you're also trying to weigh in and say, and then what? Because I mean, this thing, we are in a tight situation. This tight situation, you have got to make a deliberate decision. So I think that's why I said I would want to congratulate the members of Parliament, because they tried to give some trade-offs. Because some of the clauses which they were negotiating, they tried to negotiate, but then much of whatever proposals the Azimios were coming, because of the numbers, they were really, you can say they were washed because of the numbers. But you could see some individual members. I couldn't say that Azimio as a group, but there was some deliberate effort from some individual members who brought some counter stories to some specific clauses. You could see that somebody is well grounded on whatever it is that he was proposing, and really carried the heart and soul of the Kenyans, that you are going to hurt Kenyans if you indeed move this. But it was on very minor clauses. And then there was already, of course, you remember there was the threat from from the executive that, if you're going to oppose this and you want CDF, we will be waiting for you there, and that is the worst scare to a member of Parliament that there can be.
But again, just
there should be individual consequences.
Legally speaking, it's not the mandate of the executive to disburse CDF to the constituencies. I mean, what's the cost and happen?
That's actually what you have said. But then you know the reality. Between you and me, you know the other reality, that you could be told we don't have the monies yet, we're going to disperse. You remember, even in the school, it's really the Ministry of Education, there's some interesting scenario which is happening, that some schools have received disbursement and others are complaining they have not received. So you don't want to be an MP and then you are told that your region hasn't really received disbursement.
Churchill, was Azimio, did they play their oversight role, to counter the Kenya Kwanza government?
I think they were playing a two-pronged game, in the sense that they were in a position where they needed to have certain fears that Mheshimiwa is raising sorted internally. Play to the game of government privately, and also play to the game of the public publicly. Because the public sees you as their defender of, the person who is defending against high cost of living, and portraying this budget as a budget that is going to raise the cost of living for Kenyans, and so you are advocating against it. So that's what they were doing in public, and they needed to make people believe that that is what they're doing even in Parliament. But that is not necessarily what they may have been doing privately in Parliament. So I think that they were playing a two-pronged game, so that at the end of the budget, it's a win-win for them. They win both by ensuring government sees them as people who did not necessarily fight against this bill, and also the public, they win by the public knowing that, you know what, you tried to fight for us to the extent to which you can,
yes,
but you didn't have the numbers. so somehow for them, I think it was that two-pronged approach for them. And you know, as is now, people still see them as people who fought and tried to fight, but they could not be able to do what? To win. But in real sense, that is not necessarily what they may have done.
Okay.
I didn't want to put it exactly the way you put it, but I mean, they were basically talking from both sides of the mouth.
Yeah, because when you look at it, even some of the Azimio legislators voted for the bill. So where does it really leave Azimio? Because it means that Azimio didn't have strong numbers even to oppose, because you want to go full throttle, man to man in the National Assembly, but that didn't happen. A majority, some of them voted for the bill, and here we are. Where does this leave Azimio, if not Raila Odinga as the head or as the chair or as the leader of Azimio generally? Wakili.
I think for Azimio, their work is cut out. I mean, as a coalition, they need to really sit and discuss whether this is the way they want to go. Because if all goes, or this parliament proceeds voting the way it's voting, then we wouldn't have anything called Azimio, at least in the public eye, because now it will be some mongrel of an amalgamation of politicians who can vote whatever side they want and get away with it. I think they need to do a caucus, a serious caucus, and do a serious reprimanding of the members who actually didn't cooperate. And then, you know, I'm also thinking also as a politician, you will want to know what kind of trade-offs will the Azimio people, because you want to discipline me. What are you giving me in exchange? You know, that is also the other question, because if I vote with government, then there are some things I'm assured of which I can be able to either benefit personally or be able to give to my people and tell them this is what I've secured for you. Because it also goes to personal legacies as to how you're going to come back in 2027, or what it is that you can reclaim from what you lost in the campaigns. So it has to be a very tight balance that whatever Azimio coalition will sit and agree on, it has got to be watertight, otherwise they will be just doing it for a show. So we are likely to see more of this. Government is very vicious, government is very determined, government is very deliberate in terms of what it wants. I don't know what Azimio is. It's not coming out strongly. They don't have a clear agenda. They didn't have, the way we said that, they didn't have a clear plan on how to oppose this or come up with an alternative budget, which even the Kenya Kwanza people told us, you are opposing this. Why don't you come with your own budget, which we can look at?
Even that, Wakili, you know, during the public participation, we can still count that was part of an alternative to the budget. But a majority of Kenyans, or even some of the entities who presented the memoranda to the committee, said that none of the memoranda was captured in the budget. So it means that even Azimio would have gone flat foot.
I've ever participated in those parliamentary process of public participation. They received thousands, if not millions, of comments. Collecting them and is a joke. It's literally a joke. So the few who get the opportunity to go and present their petitions and to the committees are the ones who can be able to raise the issues, because through the professional groups and the caucus groups, they can be able to say that we gave our petitions, but they were not looked into. But then there is the aspect of these are random moving things. But there's already a budget which is collected and which is clear, which is self-explanatory. For you to crystallize this into a very clear-cut thing, it becomes a very big challenge, and Parliament, that is not its role. So we needed the opposition to take some of these views, especially from the caucuses, which are very specific, and then even reduce it into something clear, which they can give us a counter story, because that is the part of representation. But if they fail on that, then they fail managed, because everybody else did their bit. I think it's the Azimio coalition which didn't do that bit.
Somebody can assume that Azimio didn't imagine that you're not going to make government, because the whole process of making a budget takes almost close to a year or something, because you have to do comparisons between states and jurisdictions and see, the variances before coming with a final budget. But gentlemen, let's talk about this. Azimio leader comes back into the country from Poland. He attended a conference of opposition leaders across the globe, and he's returning to a rally tomorrow in Kamkunji grounds. And this is most likely to pronounce himself into the budget. Let me start with you, Churchill. So what way or which way Azimio tomorrow? Let's start immediately after that pronouncement. What will happen? Is it going to yield any fruit?
The thing is, and one of the things that Azimio has been trying to do is to package government in a given way that they want. And their mode of, when I look at their mode of engagement, the way they are handling opposition, it's not they're not necessarily interested in a structured opposition, but a structured opposition that is aimed at either obstructing government or influencing public opinion on a given issue, or making government to have, creating a public debate. So maybe those are some of the things that the way what they could be interested in. And during the rally on Tuesday, what I expect is that they want to raise the stake of how much this budget is going to make the lives of Kenyans difficult. So that the people can be able to see that this budget is not for you. So they just want to package government in a negative way, that this is a government that is working for themselves, they want to eat your money, just negatively, but nothing constructive. I get it.
Yes.
So
what would be the outcome?
So the outcome will just be a political. It will just be a political opinion. Will just be how does the people perceive government?
Right.
And in the long run, you realize that as the person who is leading a country, as leading a democracy, you will always want to lead a country that is, when you have this kind of economic turmoil where you have a lot of huge debts and things like that, you will always want to have peace and calm to rule that country. And so when you have this a strong force against you, you might then want to extend a hand for them and ask them, what do you want? I get it.
Yes.
So the opposition is raising a stake for them to be, for a hand to be raised on them, so that somebody can call them.
Yeah,
I get it.
This reminds me of what the president said yesterday in Kajiado, that whatever you do, please don't sabotage the economy. Do you think the president has an idea of what probably might happen from tomorrow? Wakili?
I think the president is very clear, because I think I will say that he wasn't so clear when he was campaigning, but now that he has taken the reins,
the pitch is now open.
The picture is very clear for him.
Yes.
The crystal ball is very clear for him, so he knows what he wants. The reason he came up with this budget, and he really wants to own it up, because he really has fought for it. He has pushed for it, as opposed to any other previous government we have ever seen. We didn't see Kibaki fight for a budget. At least there was some push and pulls in parliament, but we didn't see an executive which is hell-bent, making sure, even issuing failed threats. And then he's also making statements like the ones which he made in Kajiado yesterday, that this country belongs to all of us. Do your thing, but do not sabotage. You know where we stand. Between you and me, you know where we stand. Do not sabotage this particular process. Give me a chance to actually make this right. That is actually what he's asking. That's why I think Kenyans will not forgive him at the end of the day if these monies which have been collected painfully from the pockets of Kenyans, albeit unwillingly, they are willing to let him have it,
yes,
so that he can be able to use it to change this country. If he ends up claiming that he cannot, what else can he do? Like the former president told us, what else do you want me to do? And throw his hands up, then we will not forgive him, because we will have given him all that he asked for. We expect him to do that which we expect him to do.
All right, gentlemen, let's take a break. But when we come back, Eric Theory, LSK president, said that he's been heading to court either today or tomorrow to challenge the application of the new taxes. And of course, we know that Azimio also said that they're going to court through Otiende Amolo, who said over the weekend, and we still have that court case by Okia Mtata still pending in court. We are waiting to see how this legal battle is going to pan out. Let's discuss that when we come back on what it means to the president, Azimio, and even you as the taxpayer. Remember, deadline is fast approaching and the budget has to be rolled out. So what is going to be next? Let's take a break. We'll be discussing that shortly after this. Yeah. Welcome back. We are still having this discussion here on Iron Politics. We're just taking a look at what happened over the week, or the past 1 week, as budget is concerned, and now what we should be looking forward to this coming week. Now, okay, let me start with you at this particular point. A legal battle is at the doorstep of the president. LSK boss Eric Theory says that he's going to go to court today to challenge the application of the taxes. Okia Mtata's case is still pending in court. And of course, we have got civil servants, we have got taxpayers, a host, or even Azimio. Otiende Amolo said that they are going to go to court. Now, this must be so heavy for the courts to determine and the president to be patient. We know the deadline is fast approaching. So what is going to give?
From where I sit, I think it's not going to be so heavy. What there is, or what is going to happen is, Okia Mtata came to court before, I think a bit earlier, and some of the things he was raising are to the tune that there are some clauses in this particular financial bill which were actually offending the constitution.
Yes.
So the work of the courts is going to be very easy. Look at what the constitution says, interpret it vis-a-vis what the finance bill is trying to put across to Kenyans. Then they will be able to pronounce some of the sections of the finance bill or finance act, whatever that is going to be, if the president gets to sign it, to be offending the constitution. Then they will have to be thrown back to parliament for major amendments. So the battle for this is not done. We will need to give it some more time till the courts have decided on that. But a major part of the finance bill or the finance act, when the president assents, is still going to be clear or compliant with the constitution, and these sections the country will continue collecting the monies and expending them and using them for the benefit of the Kenyans. Save for the specific sections, which I think there are not too many. So once the court makes a deliberate decision on that, then we will be able to know which ones have either Okia Mtata petition or the Theory's petition have been able to prove to be against the constitution, because there's that threshold. There's that particular threshold which you have to present to the court, and the courts will have to weigh against what it is, because courts, for their work is not to say that, we are looking at public interest. What they are looking at is the legality of the whole process, whether it reaches the threshold of the constitution, which is very important. If you listen to what Jimmy was talking about, that some of the monies have been used illegally against, or some of the debts have been acquired without the consent of parliament, that brings a lot of questions. So we'll start now seeing a very clear, transparent process, which even in the next budget, when this is going to happen, it will be very clear in the minds of Kenyans that, we don't want to do something which is going again to be taken to court and then it's going to be stopped. For example, if a scenario comes by where the 1.5% of the housing tax, which is if the court finds that indeed, just for argument's sake, that it's not going to be agreeing with the constitution or it's offending the constitution. And it's such a big part of this particular budget that's been viciously negotiated that is going to derail the plan of government. So they will have to wait and, for example, regularize. And we have had some of these things actually happen. You remember the issue of handing KMC to the military. I went to court. The court had to give some trade-offs. I think it was very very fair to the government and to the other people that this is wrong, but we give you a year to regularize. So you don't collect till you regularize, and then you can go ahead and collect. You know, that becomes a win-win situation for both parties. So we are likely to see some of those scenarios play out, because also government will also be there to make their case. So it's be the courts which will be able to see what kind of trade-offs or what kind of fair arrangements they can be able to give to Kenyans, so that they can see that the government does not stop, and also we don't end up offending the constitution while at it.
Churchill, from the legal aspect, he's submitted put his submission. But let me ask you this question. I'm avoiding to ask him that question. What do you really think lies, or the judge, what rings that judge is going to handle such cases? For example, from Eric theory, particularly this one.
I think the judge will try to give wisdom that is based on trade-offs, because you look at the kind of vigor that the executive has driven this finance bill. Yes. I'm sure that where the executive sits and where the chief advisor, legal advisor of government sits, the AG, he would want to do everything to ensure that he wins the case in court. And I'm sure that the court might come with a decision that is a balance of both for government and also for the petitioner. And you know, my key issue will be the issue of the time, which I think you raised at some point. You know, the time that is going to take for this to be for the ruling to be taken and things like that. So when I look at where the judges said, I do not expect them to fully negate or fully, you know, just thrash out some of the proposals that have been made or that have been mentioned by Okia, or by Theory, sorry. Yes. That have been mentioned by Theory. So I don't expect them just to say that, you know what, these things are against the constitution, let us thrash them out. Because you see, there has been a whole process of getting to this budget. And so by thrashing out certain provisions without very thoughtful process, then it will have a huge impact on the executive.
But be that it may, do we still have some challengeable clauses in that tax in totality from where you sit? Let me start with you, Wakili. Some clauses, one or two things that can be challenged in court?
They are. I think from where I sit, if I haven't quite looked at the Theory's petition, and Okiya Omtatah was a bit all over the place. He will need some little bit of evidence to attach to it, which I think he will need the bill to pass as it has passed, and then be able to use some of the deliberations in there, or some of the professional group will come that we gave this counter proposal, it was never acted, this offends this. You know, that will really help in terms of approving Okiya Omtatah's petition. Theory, I think, petition will come at a clear point when we have this is what has been passed. Yes. Now, I hope even the judges will need to consolidate the two to have just a one case to ensure that we sit through this process in a very clear, to avoid the issues of this one is litigating over the same issues, the other one is litigating multiplicity of suits which are likely to bear the same results. So the best thing, I think, I don't know what the High Court is going to do, but sometimes you have seen scenarios whereby they are asked to actually, you are challenging the same thing, and you just amend, or we have, and then you do, the court can be able to decide once and for all on all the issues, and then a bench is decided to actually look onto those issues. So that becomes in the part of the management of the court, and depending on how they see it. I haven't seen the Theory's petition as yet. So when we are at that point, we'll be able to know what it is. But as to your question, whether they are challengeable clauses, they are. From where I sit, they are. For example, the housing, Tax, I think it's something which is not so clear to me as yet. As a lawyer, I think if asked upon, I will be able to give my advice on that, because I feel that we need to have some.
Would you give us a pro bono advice?
We did. Yes, free advice with the public.
Yes.
But, I mean, yes, it is that they want to collect this one, but they haven't explained as to how. The how is what is missing.
Who's going to be the caretaker?
Yes, such things. When they tell us the ministry is going to be in charge. Well, we have the housing department, the State Department of Housing. Then what is this framework they're going to apply to? I mean, you're telling us through the constituencies. That is quite random, because even constituencies receive CDF and there's a CDF Act.
Exactly.
So we need to be sure that who is going, what will be the accounting process, who will be in charge of these monies, how are the houses going to be built, how will be the tendering process be done, for example. Do we need a specific arm to deal with this? Because there was Oloo project housing. This is not the same as the Oloo project. They are moving away from that. So when they move away from that, for Oloo it was very clear we can see the houses. We also need to see a clear framework in regards to this, so that we can know once your money, and you know it involves a lot of things. Involves a lot of things which have got to be reduced into, because it also talks about the employer-employee. So some of those things have got to be crystallized into a clear framework, which we don't have as yet.
Okay. Churchill, you know the danger of having that question, because we are going to pay for the legal fees, much as on behalf of the citizens, he's giving his legal advice. But okay, let me ask you this. Looking at the entire situation, I mean, the whole process is going to go through court. So again, you can also chime in, Wakili. We have a deadline, 1st of July. This budget has to take effect. So what if, because the court cannot, the jury will go to either today or tomorrow, and the courts can give, depending, miracles do happen, things happen. But what if it doesn't become law 1st of July? Wakili, you can answer that when you come back. But then, what is your take on this? When you look at the whole situation, what do you think now the president has as an alternative to all this now happening right now?
You know, not all cases have to be solved in court. You know, you can seek out of court, negotiations, and just agree that you know what, call all these interested parties and agree with them on a give and take. Some of these will even involve trade-offs that that might not necessarily the public need not be privy to, just for the sake of ensuring that you have what you want go through. So that's one of the options that government, that the president can decide to go for. The other one, of course, is to wait and then go and battle with it on court. That will have impact in the sense that the court might pronounce itself and have certain provisions thrashed out, or it might have time delay for certain implementation of some of the clauses, and that will have, of course, have impact in the implementation of his budget. You know, the problem with sometimes things getting to court is that the closeness of court sessions and also even the orders that come from court the public are never privy to them. So you might think that the public knows what is happening in court. So the public knows that, you know what, our budget had been passed, we are paying taxes, we expect this, and yet a court had already given an order, and certain provisions that you think is being implemented is actually not being implemented, but the public is not privy to it. So on the public, people think that you're not doing what you promised you do, yet in really sense you're not doing it because the court had done what. So those are the challenges that you'll find. If something gets to court, politically it has a negative implication to government. So it might be necessary maybe for the government to consider an out-of-court negotiation and, you know, just agree with these people and have certain trade-offs and, you know, get these things off. Or work with the courts as it has happened before. He has a good relationship with the court, work with the court to expedite the process of making the rulings. you know.
That is like indicting the courts. Wakili is here, having a good relationship with them.
No, what he's trying to say...
That's like an indictment.
What I think Churchill is trying to say...
Yeah.
What I think Churchill is trying to say that that is not has not been new. In the Uri regime, we saw a lot of conflict with the courts, and it really didn't... I think it might have contributed to maybe a small percentage or a significant percentage in terms of his legacy, which I don't think this current president has time or enough wiggle room to start fighting with the courts. He has already started off on a clear trajectory with the courts. So some of these things are debatable. The courts are willing to can be opened to allowing some accommodation in terms of interest from both sides. So the best thing is to just go sit and do it quickly and say, for example, I think the housing tax might not be start to be effected till I think January. So maybe if that would be enough leg room for the legislation to pass, because at some point they were saying that we will need to pass the budget. Once we pass the budget, then it goes to the CES to bring a bill to Parliament to explain how these monies are going to be used. Rather, we can still have that process go even further, even move to February or March. We have a clear act, and then they start using the money. Because there's no... the law is very clear that once you tax, you need to give a clear representation on how this is going to be expended. That's what maybe the courts will want to look at, that where is this framework? How soon can you have it? Can you delay the collection of the money till this is in place? And once that is in place, then there will be no question as to
this takes me back to the question I asked you. So what would be the ripple effect if the court said 1st of July is this coming weekend, the budget doesn't take effect? So what would be the legal implication? There are two scenarios I see here. The scenario will be if there doesn't exist an order for the president not to sign, he will go ahead and sign, and it will take effect. The Uri and Okiyo Mtara and whoever will want to come to court, will want to imagine that some more people will want to jump in after it has been very clear to them. They will want to jump in and be able to put their petitions to the courts. That process will take the time that it needs to take, because some of those things, they are not going to be very immediate. So once that is in place, then the courts will be able to advise whether to give injunctive orders to some of these issues, or to just say, let's listen from all the parties. Let's listen from all the parties. You have come with your petition, let the state also respond and give maybe a time frame of a week or two to actually look into it. Once this has been very clear, the court parties have presented whatever it is that they have to, then the court can be able to make a very clear decision whether there needs to be an injunctive order or not. If there is a scenario whereby there is going to be an injunctive order, then that is of course very clear to the state that then the signing process will have to wait. We'll have to see. It will be akin to what we have seen in the US, the closing down of government. What the county governors were trying to say around here, but I don't think they pulled through it. They were a bit weak on that. So during the Trump's time, we saw the government being shut down for some time. That no government money, still we agree. I think for a week or two. So that was something which I think we are going to see more of, that the government will not be able to start using monies till the law is really complied with. We hope we don't get there, because we understand the challenge, because also government needs money to run things. If we get there, then a lot of things are going to be, a lot of Kenyans are going to be affected. But if there are some reliefs which we can have the president sign, and then we have some particular sections stopped, or be indicted for further scrutiny by the courts, or for both parties to come with a clear framework on how that is going to happen, then that is something I think we should be willing to take, and courts should be able to look into it in that particular aspect. Just to ask out of curiosity, I'm not a legal expert, but do you think the courts can actually allow the transmission to the president for assent for the budget to take effect, but hold certain clauses not to be signed and taken back for consideration or debated upon?
Yes, that would be the case, but you know, cases also are determined.
All the entire budget can be nullified in totality.
I don't think we are at that place. I don't think we are at that place to nullify the entire budget in totality. That it will mean that everybody was asleep with the law. That
it will be like nullifying an election.
An election, exactly.
Yes, yes.
Certain classes will be picked, go for court processes, but the president can be allowed to. All right, okay.
Yes.
So, all right, okay. Let's see how it goes to happen. Gentlemen, there's something I want to talk about here. The fourth estate, we've been receiving a lot of fire of late. Allow me to be on this end on behalf of my colleagues in the Republic. Where are we? What have we done wrong, Saoke? what have we done wrong in this situation? Are we, on your side, are we doing our role as the fourth estate? Are we beaming that bright light on the government, the checks and balances? Are we going past our mandate, or are we doing what we're supposed to do correctly?
Well, I think it is important for us to be a little more objective on this issue, especially when we look at where our country has come from, and also where societies of democracies, how democracies emerge. You know, the question of open societies, the whole question of an open society is the idea that you can be able to see through the lenses of everything that happens in every institution and raise concerns if need be. And the concerns that are raised, the authorities need to clear the concerns. That's the whole idea about having an open society. So if we are interested in having open societies, and you know, open societies means that the society is right from the family unit all through to governments. So accountability requires that we are open for scrutiny, and people raise issues when they are scrutinized, and the issues that are raised, you can then either clear the issues, so that people can have the right perspective of them. So that's the objective thing about having open society and accountable institutions. The other side, which many people might not want to go to, is the closed society or the closed systems, where we can be able to do whatever we want, the way we want it, and whether they are dark or they are evil or they are bad or they are good, we do them. People do not know what we are doing, and people do not care what we are doing, and people do not even want to know what we are doing. In the long run, people can be killed, and nobody will want to know. Resources can be plundered, nobody will want to know, or people don't want to know. So we really need to ask ourselves, do we want an open and accountable institutions, or do we want closed institutions? If we want open institutions, we must be open to scrutiny. And one of the institutions that is very important in scrutiny and also advancing openness of societies is media. All right?
Yeah.
If we cannot be able to allow media to scrutinize our institutions and our societies, then it means we do not necessarily believe in accountability. If the media is saying something wrong, then it is upon and it's up to those respective institutions to raise and finger and say what is right. Because in many cases you find when media raises certain issues and these issues they are being hit upon or people don't like what they are saying, usually the truth is that the media is saying the truth that other people don't want to hear.
Okay, Wakili. We all know the fourth estate plays a key role. It's not the first time that the media has been point of attack. We all remember what happened sometimes when the former First Lady attacked a media house. We had some mercenaries. You remember what happened. The past regime also, you know, Gazeti, you know, this and that, ya kufanya nini na nini. But media still moved past that, and here we are.
I think
yes, go ahead.
I think the Kenyan media has really grown some thick skin, and that is commendable. I think in the whole of Africa, we really come out as a shining spotlight in terms of accountability, and that role is majorly played by the media. I like the kind of debate we are having like now, where we are actually shedding light on everything that is happening in the country. Some other places you cannot do that, in some other countries that I mean. So if we can be able to be in support of the media, and I like the way Kenyans came out and said, whatever it is that is happening, I think it didn't warrant whatever comments that which were offered. It's a very clear indication that Kenyans are woke, Kenyans are aware that we need the media. We need to support them as much as we can, because they are our only light, they are our only eyes in places which we cannot be able to see. If they cannot be allowed enough room to actually be able to do that, then if government becomes very vindictive or takes it personally when they are actually, some questions are being put into them to actually answer, then there is something which they are hiding. So, and we don't need that. This particular regime does not need that. What we need is a transparent system. It's unfortunate that during the Kibaki era, we had a little bit of both. The incident which you've described, which I mean, I think also went to court, but there was also the other incident which I
went to court?
I think the one of the journalists who was attacked did so.
Yes.
And we saw, of course, the case going, but I mean, those are bygones. We also saw during that particular era an interesting scenario which I would want this government maybe to borrow a leaf from, whereby we had ministries of communication officers. We haven't seen that happen a lot in this, so that we have one point of call as journalists who can be able to set the record straight. Instead of so that even the cabinet secretaries do not come out, because some of them are not trained in communication. So whenever they give their opinion, it comes out raw, which offends the credibility of even, they could be right that they feel attacked, but then some of these things do not need to play out the way they are playing out. If we have a trained expert in each of the ministries who can actually come out and be able to communicate in a clear way with enough PR, with enough communication, so that things do not burn out the way they are burning out, we are able to safeguard the credibility of the ministry, we are able to safeguard the credibility of the ministry, we are able to inspire confidence to Kenyans, which is very important to know that this government is responsive, that questions put to them, they can be able to respond.
Okay. Gentlemen, I'm sure that we need to wind up at that particular point. But remember, there was even the Bible, we had the scribes and Jesus, you know, and Jesus also feared the scribes. And according to the scribes, they were ancient Israel who were learned men whose business was to study the law, transcribe it, and write commentaries on it. They were also hired on occasions when the need was written document arose, and interpretation of legal point was also needed, according to the book of Ezra. So, you know, the law of Moses, according to the law of Moses. So even Jesus himself feared the scribes in the Bible, because he didn't know he would go somewhere and the scribes would take it and interpret it, legal jargons here and there. So, yeah, nothing new under the sun. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for that. That has been Wakili Gibson Gesore, who is an advocate of the High Court and a political analyst as well. I have got Churchill Saoke, who's a political analyst and a very good commentator as well, joining me on set on Iron Politics. All right, you as a viewer, thank you so much for your valid company. My name is Victor Oloo. Thank you for watching. GMK continues after this break. Stay with us.